So welcome back to Lipid Lens. I'm your host, Marlys Koschinsky, and today I'm really pleased to be joined by Lauren Williams and Carol Kirkpatrick to talk about some very important resources that are available for patients. So I'm going to start by asking you to introduce yourselves. Dr. Williams, Lauren?
Thanks for the promotion. I'm Lauren Williams. I am a pediatric clinical dietitian, and I am currently working in Central Texas.
And I'm Dr. Carol Kirkpatrick. I am a clinical scientist for Midwest Biomedical Research. I have been there since 2022. I am also adjunct faculty at Idaho State University for the Koschinsky Division of Health Sciences.
Great. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us today. So as everyone knows, food is really woven into the fabric of our lives. Family dinners, celebrations, everyday sustenance, comfort. So when a diagnosis changes what you can eat, it doesn't just affect your meals, it affects your whole life, right? So today we're going to hear about the new and improved cookbook that the Foundation of the National Lipid Association, which I'm going to now call the FNLA, has developed for people with Familial Chylomicronemia Syndrome, or FCS, along with some new LDL-Cholesterol lowering recipes. We're going to hear about those two things. And we're going to walk through what makes these resources so valuable, what's been updated, and how patients and families can start using these resources immediately, whether you're newly diagnosed or whether you've been managing your condition for a long time. So let's get started. So before we take a closer look at the FCS cookbook, for listeners who may be newly diagnosed, can you explain, either of you can take this question, can you explain briefly what FCS is and why diet is so central to managing it?
I'll let you take that.
So FCS, or Familial Chylomicronemia Syndrome, is a condition in which people cannot digest fat in the same way as their peers. So for most of us, whenever we eat fat in foods, and fat's in a lot of different foods, and whenever we eat fat in foods, it goes into our body, it goes through this specific pathway that if you have FCS, that pathway doesn't work the way that it would for other people. And so what that means for those individuals is that they have to eat a very low-fat diet and really watch and monitor the amount of fat that they take in. Otherwise, the fat can build up in their blood. Chylomicrons can build up in your blood. That's why it's called chylomicronemia syndrome. And it can cause things like pancreatitis, and we don't want that. So it's a very low-fat diet that these individuals have to follow.
The only thing I'll add is it's very, very different from other people who have elevated triglycerides. So for people with FCS, this is a genetic disorder, typically very rare, lifelong. It's not like we can fix that deficient LPL, lipoprotein lipase. Whereas some other patients with hypertriglyceridemia, there's a little bit more flexibility with their dietary interventions. So it's very difficult. I mean, it is impacting their entire life because this is a disorder that will not go away.
And to that effect, too, it's total fat intake. Whereas, for a lot of heart healthy recipes, like for LDL cholesterol, you're really looking for heart healthy fats, things like olive oil and avocado oil and nuts and seeds. And for folks with FCS, even that counts towards your total fat intake that you have to limit.
So having heard all that, I think this question kind of just answered itself. Where did the idea for an FCS specific cookbook come from? And I think we've heard there's a need, and there's a need for, I think, to give patients control, some sense of control, like, oh, hey, I can actually, eat like this, and, it's going to be fine. I'm going to be properly nourished. I'm going to have, the nutrition that I need in a day. So I think that's fabulous.
I do want to point out, if I can, too, that this cookbook has been in existence for a while.
Right.
And I want to give credit to the pioneers for the cookbook also. So there were a group of professionals that worked with actually a person whose family member has FCS, and they came up with a lot of different recipes years ago. And this is kind of a revamp, and not even revamp, but just adding more to give more options for people.
So a real collaboration.
Yes, through the years, which is really amazing.
That's great. So what were the biggest challenges in developing recipes specifically for people with FCS, given how extreme the fat restriction needs to be?
There were quite a few challenges. I think the biggest challenge is still adding flavor. A humongous challenge is not getting things to stick. I didn't realize how much I reached for, cooking spray, for example. Like I have an avocado oil cooking spray that I use for my own personal use at home, and just to not make things stick in the pan. And so whenever you are, like for example, a couple of the failed things, if I can be so bold as to say things that failed, I know that we tried egg bites. They wouldn't come out of the container, so, things like that, and changes of texture. So as you use fat-free products, sometimes it changes the texture. So for example, like fat-free cheese was another one that is in a couple of recipes, and the texture changes were a struggle there too.
I think people don't realize how much fat in cooking does a variety of things. I mean, it's food science. And so it carries flavor. So that's where you're like having to add flavor back with seasonings and that type of thing. But it also helps things stick together, helps things to not stick in a pan. I mean, it is a challenge. And I think, having a resource where people can have recipes that they know will work and won't have the struggle of, what am I going to make is valuable, like you were pointing out, Marlys.
So are the recipes designed for the patient alone, or are they really meant to be the basis for meals that the whole family can enjoy and share together?
The whole family. Absolutely. And also things that you can take to a party as well. So we actually have a buffalo chicken dip that we made that can be taken to a party, and nobody would ever know that it is a very low-fat recipe. I tried really hard, and I'm still working on it, to have a very low-fat mac and cheese. As a pediatric dietitian, I know that, that's something that a lot of people make for their family. You can't just buy one off the shelf. And so that is still under development. That was another texture thing. But having things that they can make to where if you have, it's kind of like having a food allergy in a way, you don't want to be the person left out of what you're eating, or you have to eat something different than everybody else. I mean, that can be really hard mentally. And so really trying to make something that everybody can have instead of just that individual person.
Yeah, the social aspects. I mean, again,
it's so big.
It is, and this is lifelong. So, and typically, pediatrics is where we're identifying, hopefully, a patient with FCS. And so it is impactful in the sense of feeling isolated if you cannot be part of that kind of, food social aspect, which we all enjoy. And so everybody should be able to enjoy that. So,
and food for a lot of people is a community. Yeah.
It really is.
You go over to somebody's house for either a party or dinner or something like that.
And you bring food.
Everybody comes around food. Another one that we've filmed recently was, we actually just got through filming. I don't know when it's going to land, but a taco salad recipe too, that components of that can also be taken to parties. There's a salsa that people can take to parties. It's very low fat, but
that's great. So I'm just going to ask a little bit more about the cookbook, just a couple of short questions about the cookbook. So does the cookbook help patients and families both understand the why behind the dietary rules, not just, this is what you eat, this is, how you make it, but why certain foods are dangerous for individuals with FCS?
There are I guess you would say tear sheets or
handouts posted on the website, right?
Yes.
Like kind of below the cookbook.
There are materials that are published along with the cookbook to help with some of those questions. The hope is that individuals with FCS could find somebody who specializes in lipids that they can learn all of those things from. And also, we know that not everybody has access to that. Unfortunately. And you can go onto the foundation's website and the National Lipid Association website and find a clinician in your area. But there are other materials that can help with answering those questions as well. Right. And I think the more that we talk about it too, FCS for a really long time was something that if you didn't work with somebody who had the condition as a clinician, you may not have even heard of it. But now we're talking about it more and there's more material out there. And I'm so thankful for that, for all of these families.
Better awareness for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
And are there sections or tips in the cookbook that are specifically aimed at families with young patients?
I don't know that there are necessarily, but the reason for that is because it's really all inclusive. You know, there's a guide for how do you go out to eat? How do you read a nutrition facts label? How do you change recipes too? Because, you know, we're giving some recipes, but we're not going to be able to cover everything. Right. So if you look at a recipe online, how can you try to change it? What can you try to do?
So this is really aimed at families.
Everybody.
Everyone. Yeah.
Everybody of all ages, all walks of life.
That's great. So in the updated version of the cookbook, what are the most significant changes or additions compared to the original? Like, what's new? The food landscape certainly has changed.
Sure.
And it seems to be ever evolving. But so what are, just if you could point out the most significant changes or additions in the updated version?
The updated version now has a few more diverse recipes in terms of different cultural recipes. You know, we have, for example, like I mentioned, the taco salad yesterday, and then there's just a few different recipes that you would get from different regions of the country that might fit into or be better aligned with how a family might be eating themselves. One of the doctors that was on the project actually did a couple of grilling recipes, which is great for summertime. And I'm so thankful to have those as part of it. Another aspect of it too, I think part of the original, the cookbook had a lot of like lower sodium and all of that. And still, not that we're trying to not make it as nutritious or heart healthy overall, but we really talked about and thought about, let's try to make it more
flavorful.
I would say like more low fat while still allowing the other things.
Right.
So like we're going to allow a little bit of salt. You have no fat hardly in these recipes. You have to have flavor somewhere.
Right.
So, you know, doing a little bit more salt, allowing a little bit more of added sugar here and there, while we do still have to, for this diet, watch added sugar. But yeah, I think just adding flavor in different ways, allowing a little bit more sodium here and there, but then also more of like the cultural aspect too.
It's back to the food science. If you take the fat out, you have to do something with those other flavor enhancers, and sugar and sodium are both flavor enhancers, but you can do that in a way that is still a helpful recipe that people can enjoy because we've taken out the fat. So, and there's so many more recipes. I think that's one of the biggest things as you guys, I know you revised a couple of recipes that you updated to make more flavorful and more appealing. And then you've added so many more recipes to it.
And fresher ingredients too was another thing that we've kind of incorporated as well. Really and truly, the people that pioneered this cookbook, it was something that was brand new on the landscape. I mean, there was nothing else available. And so it's just adding to that great foundation and updating a couple of things here and there. Yesterday, actually, while we've been here, we've had the opportunity to record that other recipe. And something I said then was it's low fat, not low flavor, which I think is really important. We're not going to promote bland food. No.
Right.
That's not
And they
what we're
don't
about.
have to eat bland food. And I think
Yeah.
that's an important message that, yes, there is restriction.
Mhm.
Yes, you have to really be careful about that fat intake. And we don't want to overdo the sugar, but
Right.
it can
Right.
also be food that you hopefully enjoy.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Carol, I'm going to ask you about LDL cholesterol lowering recipes because I know that the FNLA has also developed a collection of recipes to complement the educational resources that we also provide. So, just generally, as a way of introduction to this, for someone just hearing about LDL cholesterol for the first time, can you just tell us why diet plays such a critical role in managing cholesterol?
So lifestyle is the foundation of a heart healthy, like preventing cardiovascular disease and other chronic diseases. And we say that in our guidelines across, several organizations that really the emphasis is lifestyle always first and the foundation. And even if pharmacotherapy is necessary, like patients with FCS, we now have pharmacotherapy options, but that nutrition is still important. So with lifestyle and LDL cholesterol lowering, we know that it can have an impact. There's definitely food components, foods that we know can help lower LDL cholesterol for the majority of the population. We do have genetic disorders like with FCS that is a triglyceride disorder. We have familial hypercholesterolemia, which is an LDL-C disorder. So in patients, for example, for FH, nutrition is going to play a role for sure, but we're probably not going to we won't move the needle for the majority of patients with FH. So it's going to be a combination of nutrition and pharmacotherapy. But for a lot of other people, helping them understand what types of foods or food components increase their LDL cholesterol, like saturated fatty acids, foods that are rich in saturated fat, in combination with dietary cholesterol. Dietary cholesterol does increase LDL cholesterol. So if we can help people lower their intakes of those, reducing their intakes of foods rich in saturated fat and dietary cholesterol, and then we always like to add, emphasizing what you can add to help with lowering your LDL cholesterol, foods that are rich in unsaturated fatty acids. So lower saturated fat, but then replace with foods that are rich in unsaturated fatty acids, soluble viscous fiber that we know. So oats, barley, a lot of fruits and vegetables that can be, and then chia seeds are great sources of viscosoluble fiber that will help lower LDL cholesterol. Plant cereals will help as well. Those usually have to be taken as a dietary supplement. Have to be careful because some people have acetosterolemia or are hyperabsorbers of cholesterol in general. But that's what we want to help people focus on, and why we started the recipe initiative is there's great education on the foundation website for why lowering LDL cholesterol is important. Right. And then we wanted, and really kind of based on what has already been done with the FCS cookbook, I don't know that we'll ever get to an actual cookbook, but adding recipes that people who have elevated LDL cholesterol can implement. And we don't have a whole bunch yet, but we're getting there. But those are available for people to use with their family and at home to help.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you this, because I think it's a question that other people will ask as well. What's the most common mistake that people make when they're trying to eat in a way that's going to, keep their cholesterol low? And are there recipes that help avoid that?
So I think, and I haven't seen patients for a while, but I do remember when I would work with patients, I think a mistake is that they would target one specific food.
Okay.
And I remember a gentleman once, lovely gentleman, but we were talking about what he was doing with his nutrition changes. And he's like, well, I don't eat bacon anymore. And I was like, that is fantastic. But let's talk about the other foods that might be contributing to your intake of saturated fat. So I think, and sometimes it can be really overwhelming. So you have to be careful with working with patients, and because we don't want to overwhelm them. Making nutrition and lifestyle changes is challenging. So helping them choose one or two things that they can focus on and change. But I do think, in the past, it's just been focusing on one particular food or say food group and thinking they have to either eliminate that or whatnot. Now there's so much misinformation out there. I mean, it could be multiple things. So I think, finding out what people are doing, a nutrition assessment, and figuring out what people are doing is always important to kind of figure out what they might be maybe missing the mark on.
Yeah, so this kind of follows up on that. So how should someone use recipes, aiming towards low LDL cholesterol or lowering LDL cholesterol? How should they use them alongside their medication or conversations with their care team? Is it an either or both and? So can they just say to their caregiver, I'm not taking my cholesterol lowering medication anymore because I'm managing now, I'm going to manage it through diet. So what's the communication and messaging to patients around the role of diet in the context of, LDL lowering medications?
So that's a great question, and it depends on their risk. So this is a very individualized. We always talk about individualization with nutrition interventions anyway, but for many people, they may not have a genetic disorder, or if they do have some polygenic disorder, their LDL cholesterol level isn't as high as, say, somebody with familial hypercholesterolemia. And so if a person comes into the clinic and their primary prevention, they've had no clinical ASCVD event, and their LDL cholesterol is a little elevated, little meaning 110. Like if they're 150 or so, for sure, give lifestyle a try first. I think we want people to see if they can have an impact on lifestyle, and just because that can be really rewarding. But if we don't see that LDL cholesterol and ApoB and non-HDL-C, there's other atherogenic lipoproteins that we're concerned about. So LDL-C and non-HDL-C are our kind of dual targets now that we have our 2026 dyslipidemia management guideline. Those are two goals that we want to achieve, LDL-C and non-HDL-C, checking ApoB in certain patients. If they aren't at goal after about 3 months with nutrition intervention, and they're at a very high risk, they have other risk enhancing factors, then that's a patient that should have a shared decision-making conversation with their clinician to say, can I continue with lifestyle? What are my risk factors? If it's a high-risk person, that might be a person that the clinician would discuss adding pharmacotherapy at that time. So it's not an easy question to answer because it really just depends on what else is going on with the patient, how high their risk is, their family history. there's a lot going on there. I do think allowing the majority of patients, if possible, to give lifestyle a try is really important and again, especially if you can refer to a registered dietitian nutritionist and help them see success in what they're doing, that can be very empowering to them and promote their confidence in that.
And I think an important part of this too is there is nothing that can ever be put online, whether it is fantastic recipes or really great, handouts or anything. There is nothing that is going to be put online or said in a clinic that is going to be appropriate for every single person. Like you said, it really
There's not a one size fits all.
Individualized, but you have to give them something. In clinic, one of the number one things that we hear is, just tell me what to eat. I need a meal plan. Just tell me what to eat, because it's scary. If somebody's first diagnosed with high cholesterol or high triglycerides, it's like, okay, well, what do I do now? It can be, for sure.
Yeah. Like they feel like they have to just revise everything. And that's not necessarily the case. And I think that's where it's really important to say, well, let's look at what you're doing now and let's make some tweaks where it's needed. And what do you feel comfortable with doing first, kind of thing. Yeah. I do really want to emphasize that it's and both if pharmacotherapy is determined to be needed, because lifestyle will always help the medication work more effectively, or you can use, in most patients, use a lower dose. And that's with lipid lowering therapy. That's also blood pressure medication. So lifestyle is really key for helping people stay hopefully at lower doses with their medications. So I think it's an and both if it comes to that point where they have to add pharmacotherapy.
Right. And of course, on the FNLA website, learnyourlipids.com, under the Heart Healthy tab, I know that there's a link to LDL cholesterol lowering recipes that people are more than welcome to access and have a look at. But just in closing, one last question for you. And I think this is kind of an important one. What's the one thing you hope that everyone listening to this podcast is going to walk away believing about their own ability to manage either LDL or triglycerides or any, lipid risk factors through food?
It's a really great question.
I'll let you think about it. Well, I
Thank you.
answer.
I was really hoping that you had
Well, in closing, I did also want to make sure we emphasize there's a difference between LDL cholesterol lowering recipes and FCS recipes.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes.
So when you look at the LDL-C lowering recipes, and Lauren and I have talked about one of the recipes in particular, it's our Mediterranean bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And if a person looks at that, they will see a very high amount of total fat per serving because it's different. It's a different disorder. So people with FCS cannot have any, like very, very little fat.
Sure.
Right.
With pretty much, LDL cholesterol lowering and other lipid disorders, it's really the type of fat. So like Lauren was pointing out earlier, total fat is important for patients with FCS. Type of fat is important for patients with elevated LDL-C.
Mm-hmm.
So there may be a little bit more fat in our LDL-C lowering recipes, but it's unsaturated fats that are higher. So that's what I mentioned earlier. We know unsaturated fats can help lower LDL cholesterol, and they're also richer in fiber. So there's just that difference. And I think helping people have that resource, back to your summarized question, helping them know that I think what's great about the FNLA website is it's educating. It's educating patients with not only understanding their disorder, but then, okay, what does that mean when I'm translating this into my life? Like, oh, this is how I can modify my recipe to make it something I love and I've made for years in my family. This is how I can do, steps with the FCS handouts to help me still fit it in. And it's the same thing with the LDL cholesterol information, like understanding how does this impact my health and empower me to, have an idea of what I can have for breakfast that I know is going to help with improving my atherogenic lipid levels.
Yeah. And I think the more people can feel empowered about their health, the more successful any interventions will be, that are prescribed by their clinicians and caregiving team. I think this is just a sense of a way to make patients feel, that they can do something. They can choose, and it gives them a sense of control over, whatever lipid disorder that they may be facing, whether it's FCS or elevated LDL. There are things that they can do. And I think that's a very important message.
Knowledge is power.
And if I may too, I think one of the most important messages that any of us can give is to go to the right places for information.
Absolutely.
Online is the wild west of nutrition information right now. And some of the information can actually be very harmful. And so, anybody that's listening to this podcast is listening because they have a vested interest, right? And so whether they're somebody who has FH or elevated, LDL cholesterol, or they do have somebody in their life that has FCS, if you're listening right now, you care, right? So one, I'm thankful for people that are coming to things like this podcast, to the FNLA website, to get that good information that's evidence-based information. It's not just one thing that worked for one person that one time, or something that gets a lot of clicks on social media, because that's another thing, is the extremes. So I think the biggest thing is having things on our website that are from people that are in the know about the evidence and not just saying something to give views.
Yes. Yeah. So evidence-based knowledge is power.
Yes, that's right. Not all knowledge is power.
I like that. Some knowledge is dangerous.
That is such a great takeaway. I love that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both very much. This has been very informative, and I appreciate your time this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.